Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Yvonne here from My Halal Kitchen. It has been a month since I've done an interview with you guys, and I am very excited to have a new guest today, Hash Assad of Assad Wealth Management, coming from to us from Canada. Welcome, Hash. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, I'm really well. Jazakallah khairan for having me. Super
Yeah,
excited.
I am too. So let me tell everybody how we met, because that's how we came to the conclusion that we really needed to have this interview about money and wealth and halal finance and women and money, which I never expected to have that conversation with you, but that was really cool. We met at the Halal Expo in Toronto. Was that in May? Yeah, it was in May.
Yeah, that's
Yesterday.
right.
Yeah, I think you came up to my booth and we just started talking about what you do.
That's right.
You have a wealth management company, and we got on the topic of women and money. And I'm really a big advocate of like women having their own money and securing it and knowing what to do. But I'm not the expert in any of that.
That's
And I
fine.
was really happy that you have a really solid business where you help people manage their money and their wealth. So let me just do a brief overview of what you do, and then I'm going to let you take the floor and go deeper and tell us all, who you are, how you got into Islamic finance, and how you got into your business today.
Inshallah ta'ala.
So Hash Assad is an executive financial consultant, a division director with 18 years of experience as a financial advisor. Hash has been recognized and respected for his extensive experience in providing comprehensive financial planning for families, professionals, retirees, and associations. Hash is personally committed to understanding the client's needs and providing them with an in depth analysis along with personalized solutions. I like that because everybody's needs are different.
That's
So,
true.
so
Very
tell
true.
us what that means, and what's your story? Because you're an entrepreneur as well. You started your own management company, so I think that's a really cool thing that people would be interested in knowing.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know what? I have some slides. We'll share that in a minute or two. But yeah, you know what? For me, I started very, very, very young. I was actually the youngest person in the company at one point. I literally finished high school, took a year off, and then when I was 20 is when I started my career. So you can kind of calculate my age if you needed to.
You're in finance, right?
Literally in finance, I started with the same company,
Mhm.
and because I was interested in money, I was interested in how money works, how wealth works, how do people have so much of it, and more importantly, how do you manage it so well. So it's been a long time, almost coming up to 2 decades here, since I've been in the industry and providing comprehensive financial planning. Now you have to remember that wealth management is not just investing, right?
Mhm.
Although a lot of us do talk about the investment aspect of it, which is very, very important. But I always use an analogy of of a trip. Let's just say I'm going to use the example of Canada, but I mean, let's just use the United States. You're in LA and you're trying to go to New York.
Mhm.
That's your journey, and you have to go all the way across the whole nation. Now, when you travel this journey, you can't walk it because it's too long, and therefore you need a type of vehicle to get from point A to point B. The
Mhm.
question is, what kind of vehicle do you have? What kind of tires? What kind of windshield? How many seats are in the vehicle? Who else is traveling with you? What kind of engine is it going to have? And the analogy of this vehicle is that of a plan, right? A lot of us do not have a plan. Like we don't have a way to calculate this out. So when we look at wealth management, the vehicle is the plan, and what runs this vehicle is the gas, and the gas is investments. Now, if you're standing in LA with a gallon of gas, you're not going very far. But if you have a vehicle with no gas, which means you don't have money to fund the plan, you're not going very far. So those all come together and they work hand in hand. So in addition to making sure that you have a very robust investment plan, you want to make sure you have an estate plan. What happens to your wealth when you pass away? Do you have a will? Do you have a personal directive? What happens? You're incapacitated and not able to make financial decisions.
Exactly.
Who's going to look after you? Who's going to look after your health questions too? So those are a few different things to look into in addition to having a tax plan, for example, a written retirement plan. Yeah, how are we going to address inflation? Right, and
Oh,
that's a
that's
real concern nowadays.
awesome.
So that's what I do, and is that my job is to make sure you have a vehicle that is suited for your specific needs. You got to remember, some people are going to drive in Ferraris across the nation, and some are going to drive in their Toyotas. that's fine.
Do you,
But making sure that having that.
do you find that it's difficult for people to talk about money? Because it's one of the sort of taboo subjects. I think people kind of want to avoid it, even with their loved ones. It seems like it's a difficult subject, particularly when there's not enough, or it's the seemingly not enough. But perhaps also in the Muslim community, the topic of money can quickly turn to a dunya topic.
Right. Right.
How do you help people with that, overcoming that sort of mindset?
Yeah, so you know what? Me and you spoke about this when we first met, and we talked about the three F's in life. And let me explain what those are. So there's concept that I come across in my career. It's called the three F's, and depending who you are, each one of these F's will rank differently for you. And when I say F, is the letter F. So the first F is your faith, your second one is your family, and the third is your finance. Now, if I ask our audience here, 99% of the time, the answer I'm going to get hash. Number one is my faith. Number first F is my faith, can't change that. Number two is my family, can't change that. Number three is my finance. And although that's the correct order of having it, but I would argue the fact that the finance F runs the other two Fs, because if your affairs are in order, you're going to have a great faith. You're going to have the capacity to go for Hajj, Umrah, and pray on time, not have to worry about work hours and things like that.
Exactly.
If your finances are in order, of course, you're going to have a great family. Your children are going to go to the best schools. You're going to have to be able to buy everything for them, have a great house, cars, and everything else that comes with it. And so we're the guys. I'm the guy that's messing with that F, and it's very big responsibility to make sure that it works, to make sure the other F's are in order. So the subject of money internally, there is, of course, within our community, this usually our brothers are the ones that are handling the money aspect of it. Our sisters at home, not much involved in this. Whenever if people approach me when it comes to financial planning or investing, my first goal is to make sure I have our sisters in the meeting, because I want them there. I want them to know who I am, what I look like, what are we talking about. They may not comprehend everything, and that's okay, because that's their first sort of introduction to finance. But it's very, very, very important to have them there, because more than likely, I will be dead, he will be dead, and she'll be alive and having to deal with it, not having much of a knowledge. So from my perspective, I try my best to include everybody in. And from the subject of taboo, once you have wealth, a little bit of wealth, then you start seeking advice. So we are at slightly, at a different stage when people, okay, I have money now, I need somebody to help me, versus people who don't have it and still, struggling.
So are you helping Americans as well as Canadians? Because I know your business is based in Canada. So people watching might want to know that.
Excellent question. So unfortunately, for time being, we're only in Canada, not in US. We're restricted to licensing and capacity to be able to advise true planning to different states and the rules and regulations that come with it. Even with Alberta, so within Canada, each province has their own rules and regulations. So we are within certain provinces for time being.
But people can still watch your tips and your interviews. You have some excellent interviews, and I'll link the your YouTube channel to the comment section in a moment. But just so people watching will know that they can still get a lot of your advice, and inshallah, we'll be doing more interviews as well. So let's talk about halal finance. What does that mean for people watching? I mean, some people might laugh at that and say, okay, what is halal finance? I mean, I get that even with food, is water, does water have to be halal? I think sometimes it's just a matter of explaining the details, right? Why something.
Why, certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, finance, Islamic finance is a very, very vast subject, something that's been with us for over 1400 years, right? And we're just talking about one aspect of it, which is the investment aspect of it, how you run your life according to the Sunnah and the teachings of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So there's a lot to Islamic finance, and I'm not by any means an expert in that. I only look at one section of Islamic finance, which is our ability to invest our wealth in a halal way. But Islamic finance is, again, how do you earn your risk? Where is your money coming from? We talked a little bit about some of the stuff, but I have some slides here I'll show you. But
Sure.
we actually have done comprehensive webinar series, which are available on our website, about how do you invest your money halal way, how do you buy your home the halal way. So we look at Islamic finance. The biggest thing, the number one goal, everybody that comes to me is that I want to buy a home. I want to have a place for my children. I want to be able to touch it, feel it, but I don't want to get into riba. And again, interest is everywhere. Everything that we touch and feel is interest based. So avoiding it is very, very important for all of us. Just like with your aspect of, halal. How do you eat halal without having any contamination whatsoever when it comes to non haram stuff? So when it comes to money, same thing applies. How do we buy our home the halal way? How do I buy my house the halal? Sorry, my car the halal way? How do I send my children to school the halal way without having to take loans out? And how do I invest my wealth in halal ways? So we look at, all that to make sure. The biggest thing that we do is the avoidance of riba, amongst other things, when it comes to Islamic finance.
Is it becoming easier these days to have, invest in halal stocks, for example, or investment vehicles that are halal? Is it becoming easier than it was, say, 10 years ago or so?
Oh, you have no idea how easy it is nowadays.
Oh,
When I first started out, it was impossible to do what I was doing, and we were just, finding, any ways to invest our wealth in halal way, and given the criteria, even the criteria has become more and more transparent now. We truly have the likes of IOFI, which have been around for a very long time, but now, everybody knows what that is and what it looks like, and the rules and regulations about how do you certify a company to be halal or haram. That's becoming more and more transparent, and especially I would say in the last 4 years, the last 3 to 4 years, investing your wealth in halal way has become even more easier. There are, the likes of Wahid investments that are in US. You have Sharia portfolio. We're actually creating halal products for us to just
right.
buy and invest into. And there's apps. Actually, you can literally download apps and check if the company is halal or haram if you're doing it on your own. These
Right.
didn't exist. I wish they existed when I first started, because we had to manually do all that work.
Yeah, it's the same with food. It's the same. When I first
Yeah,
started 14 years ago, it's like it was just a push to kind of let people understand. And then when people would understand it, then then the options would start to pop up, right? So
exactly.
if there's an education curve, and then we can start introducing the products or the vehicles. And then once those options are available, then there's the demand starts to come, because then people say, oh, there's something available that I didn't even realize was there before. So it's a really interesting time to be in, like, the whole halal industry in general.
In general, yeah.
Yeah.
And alhamdulillah, I know for the likes of yourself who are doing great work for our community and spreading the word, and educating people. We're making strides. We're making advancement, and the help of technology is actually
Yeah.
tremendous, because to get the word out, and we have a lot of good brothers and sisters working in this field for both of us, to make it easy for us to be able to not only invest our wealth in halal way, but avoid the obvious stuff.
Right, right. So it must be a bit challenging, though, because on one hand, you have the finance background, and then you bring in the Islamic part of it and the halal part of it.
Yeah.
And do you seek the advice of scholars, or how do you educate yourself so that you bring the proper information to your clients? What's your sort of method to get the right stuff out to people?
Yeah, great question. I was thinking about this a few months ago, and I'm actually truly blessed to have started in this industry, and have learned the ways of people that are not of the faith, of course, because
Right.
for them, when it comes to investing, they're not thinking about is this halal or haram. They're thinking about, how do I take my wealth and pass it on to my next generation? How do I have a good tax strategy? How do I make sure that I give to the charities that I support, in the churches that I support? So when it comes to when it comes to finance, unfortunately, our community is stuck on step one, and the average Canadian is maybe at step 12, and the high net worth Canadians at step 20. That is how far behind we are. when it comes to this, because as soon as we talk about money, the first thing is it halal or haram, and we just back away, right?
Right, right. And there's so many intricate details involved in the middle.
Exactly. So we don't do any of that. So I'm very glad that I had the capacity to look at step 20, what it looks like, to
Mhm.
be able to take people from step 1 to step 20, and quick. And that's what it is. So from my perspective, having the credentials and having the experience to have seen that done, now bringing that to our community and say, okay, listen, yes, it's halal. Let's get past that part of it, because we're going to invest your money halal way. Here's the Sharia Supervisory Board. Here's the criteria that we use to make the investments halal. But let's talk about tax planning. How do we make sure the money gets to your children and not to Revenue Canada in this case, and in your IRS in your case?
Mhm.
That's more important, because we want to make sure to do that. How do we make sure your business assets are growing and invested in a halal way, and correct business tax planning is done? So from the finance aspect of it, so I have the knowledge of this world, and trying to bring that to our community, which is my goal is, number one, to educate as many people as I can, to allow them the capacity to know Islamic finance, and allow them to learn and do it on their own if they can.
Mhm.
And this is very, very important for me, because the amount of people that I've seen invest their money in a haram way, because not because they were trying to do it, because they didn't have the knowledge.
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
It's so
so
similar to food. It's
yeah,
so similar to the culinary world. Like you need to know the foundation of cooking, anything. I mean, basics, right? You need to be kind of schooled in ingredients and methods and techniques, and then
yeah,
work in the halal part of it. And people don't realize what's actually like possible to be in your food. It's the same kind of. I'm gonna, make a sort of comparison to, because that's how I understand what you've just said. I, relate everything
yeah,
to the food world, but it's
yeah,
it's so similar. It's like what's in those ingredients, right? What's in those
exactly.
byproducts. And we see things on the surface, but people might buy something not realizing, not even imagining that it's not halal or whatever. And it's kind of the same with money. I think money may be even more complicated than food.
It is very complicated, because with food, it goes in our stomach and we feel
Right,
it, we touch it, and it's
right,
real.
right, right, right. Money is, people like to talk about food. I don't
Yeah.
think people really like to talk about money that much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So part number one for me is to make sure that we're educated, and I provide a lot of that. Actually, some of the webinars that you would see, and we'll link it in description here, is actually, if you literally follow it, you will know what to do and how to do and how to invest your money in a halal way. Although we provide solutions for people who have significant wealth and they want some help and guidance and things like that, then we exist there, right? But there's over 1 million of us in Canada, and my job is to educate as many as we can, provide them the tools to be able to know what to do on their own.
Mhm.
So that's number one. Number two would be to make sure that we move as fast as possible from step 1 to step 20. We go beyond the halal haram and now start talking about how do we do true financial planning, because we don't have it. I would say 99% of us don't have it. And I want to joke a little bit here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I often ask people, they come to see me, I ask them, like, hey, do you want a brown people retirement plan, or do you want the white people retirement plan?
Oh, what does that mean?
What does
Explain.
that mean exactly? So,
Explain.
here's the American and the Canadian retirement plan. They work, they save money over time, they invest that wealth, they get to a certain point in life where they retire, and they use that money to live off of, and fund their lifestyle and their dreams and wishes until they pass away. That's a typical way of doing it. The brown people retirement plan is to have as many children as possible, inshallah ta'ala, and then one or two of them are going to be really, really good, and they go look after you. And I am my parents' retirement plan, and many of us are, and of course
Mhm.
that was the way we funded our parents and made sure they looked after. Now, not saying that our children are not going to look after us in this part of the world. They will be there for us, because we've given them the correct akhlaq, and we're giving them the correct upbringing. The question is, do we want to put that burden on them or not? So therefore, it's upon us to be able to take care of this, retirement aspect of it, and make sure that we can live peacefully and achieve our dreams being able to go for vacations, go for Umrah and Hajj in our later years and not worry about money.
And also have generational wealth, right? Teaching the next generation what to do with money. I think a lot of the problem is that when we're not taught by our parents how to properly invest, it becomes like by the time you're in your 20s or 30s that you feel like you're so behind, because they always say, oh, you should have been investing when you were in your 20s. And then you're in your 40s and you're like, oh my God, you're finally making your salary. And then you're like reading everything about investing that should have been done in the 20s.
That's very true. So
Yeah.
that problem actually is very systematic across everywhere. It's not actually kind of exclusive to our community
Mhm.
because all children are not taught the basics of
Mhm.
finance at any level until it's too late.
Yeah.
There's a systematic issue around that part of it. There's certain provinces, states in Canada who are working very diligently to introduce some education at the much earlier stages to allow our children to know what taxes are and what do you
Yeah.
have to do and how do you file them, right? But inshallah ta'ala, that is where my goal is, again, to educate as much as I can, provide some true financial planning to our people to make sure we move as fast as possible along the scale. And yeah, multi-generational wealth, we have the wealth. To be honest with you, our community is very strong.
Mhm.
We have the money. It's just we don't know what to do with it.
I think that's the case for so many people, right? It's just like, we might like put your head down for years and years, and then all of a sudden you're, mashallah, you're okay. But
Yeah,
then you find out that cash should not be just sitting in a bank account. It's like cash burns and you're supposed to invest it. But then the fear sets in, where is it? Bitcoin? Is it NFTs? Now there's all these, the cryptos, and do you buy properties or not? And, the housing market, there's so much information. And now inflation and recession coming. People
yes,
just, you know, you want to focus on your craft.
yes,
I find myself having that issue where, I get up and I'm, working on my work, but then I start to think, oh, well, I should be looking at the stocks. I should be thinking about crypto. And then now they're talking about inflation. What do I do to hedge that? And it
yeah,
distracts me from my craft. So I
yeah.
love what you do because you help save people time to deal with all of that and kind of like not have such a headache and worry, because you're giving advice and then helping them, just uh, put that money in a place that is, inshallah, safer and going to bring something back in the future.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better, honestly, because we always say to people, whenever we talk to an engineer, I always ask them, like, ask me an engineering question. I don't like, if you ask me how to make food, just so you know, I could probably make an eggs, and that's as far as I'm going to go. But alhamdulillah, my wife is amazing at making any kind of food. That is her skills. So I agree 100% when it comes to there's this fine line between DIY and then the professional realm. Uh,
Yes.
Exactly. So people who are like yourself, who are extremely busy, doctors and agent professionals, they want to hire the best and they want to pay them a little bit and then let them handle everything else because they're focused on what they do and that's what they're best at, right?
Mhm.
There's going to be a portion of the population who is truly interested in this. They want to know what the money is and how it works, what the stock market is, what the crypto is, what inflation is doing, what Jerome Powell is saying today, right now, live, and that's fine. Alhamdulillah for those people, they have that interest to do that. It's like, people have, they're engineers or doctors, but they work on their cars, right? But having to do that full time,
Yeah.
it doesn't
So we
work.
don't have to feel bad for not digging deeper. Like sometimes I feel really bad that I'm not spending more time to educate myself. I go to Yahoo Finance sometimes and I'm like, trying to pick stocks for my, that I, companies that I buy things from, but it just feels like so catch and go. And like you said, DIY. And it makes me more nervous because I know that I only have like 0.001% of information that you have. I mean, but, blindfold me in the kitchen and I could put a meal together. But I
Exactly.
could all day reading finance stuff, and I understand an overview, but does that make me, make an informed decision? Not really. That's kind of dangerous to start,
Yeah.
shuffling money. So,
Yeah.
so, I think what you said was so correct that, you can't DIY this stuff. You can lose your entire life savings that way.
That's very true. So just to help you out, because again, I'm not able to feel help you out because you're where you are, and a lot of people maybe who are listening here, I'll provide some tips and guidance if I may. So first and foremost, you're right. Unless you do this for a living, unless you're checking the market every 5 minutes and knowing exactly what's going on and what the impacts of these things are going to be on you, it's better not to get involved. There's a couple things. Number one is, let's talk a little bit about the aspect of a cash. A lot of us are sitting on cash in our checking accounts, which is not invested. So I have two issues with that. Number one is inflation. So historically, inflation has been maybe 2.5%, 3%. So even if we assume a 3% inflation, although it's at 8 now, um, if you have $100,000 sitting in a checking account, June 23rd of 2023, that $100,000 worth $97,000. Like what you can buy with is 97. In today's world, it's about $93,000. So already that money has lost money. You may not know it, but it's gone.
Yeah.
You may think you have $100,000, but what you can buy with it is only $93,000. That's number one. Number two, zakat. We have to make sure we pay zakat on cash that we have on hand, especially for a year. 2.5%. So now, even at 3% inflation, 2.5% zakat, that money has to make 5.5% to be even 12
Right.
months later.
Such a good point. Yes. So you're
Right?
actually kind of losing a lot there.
You're doing a lot. And at 7% or 8% inflation plus 2.5%, your 100,000 is now worth $90,000. If you got $1 million sitting in a checking account, that is worth 900 grand. Gone.
Right. Whereas if you had invested that in assets and paid your zakat, you wouldn't be behind. You would be even or ahead.
Exactly, inshallah ta'ala. So when it comes to investing, just have to keep in mind there's sort of two ways it could go. A year later, $100,000 could be, $100,000. It could be, $110,000. It could be 90 as well. Like, don't get me wrong, the markets do fluctuate; they go up and down, but you have the higher possibility of having the $110,000 a year, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, because the markets may fluctuate this year, but they always go up for sure over the long term. So that's one thing. So having money sit there do nothing is more dangerous than trying to do something. Now, when it comes to trying to do something, this is where we have to be slightly careful, because not only do you have to pick the right companies to invest in and make sure those companies will be worth more down the road. It may be a right or wrong decision because you could lose your life savings if you don't pick the right stuff. It's more important to know also if those companies halal haram, right? So there's like level, is it a good company? Level two, is it halal, right? Now the company could be halal, but it could be a very bad company. So there's just because halal doesn't mean it's good. So a simple solution towards that would be, if you do something like index investing, which is basically you do buy, halal index or halal, ETF, which it was halal ETF is a basket of stocks that have been professionally put together for you, and it has 50, 60, 100, 200 different names in there. So if one of them goes bankrupt, it's okay. You got other and 199 names that are going to be okay, inshallah ta'ala. And if you do that, then you're just basically piling money into this, and over the long term, you're going to be just fine instead of taking specific risks. Now, these investments are available in a fully halal compliant way. They're available both in Canada and US, so that's great for all of us. And allows you to be able to get started in halal. With these indices have Sharia supervisory board. They check the compliance of these companies, so that's done for you. And alhamdulillah, you can start creating wealth. Now, going back to what we said earlier in the beginning, this is the gas we're talking about. You still need a car. You still need a plan. Piling all the money into this doesn't mean you're going to be able to retire. And what that looks like, and how far are you from retirement, and inflation, cost of living, taxation.
Yeah. So numbers.
Conversation.
Yeah, and a lot of us, I think, there's fear of sitting down I read this book once about money, and one of the things it said in there was it was about facing your fear, that you
Mhm.
had to like look at everything and face it and say, okay, even if there's not enough or what you think is enough, you still have to have that reality check. And so what you're saying is like there's so many moving parts here that again, your service kind of puts it all under one roof for people. I feel like you also are a bit of a counselor in a way, because you're bringing, for example, married couples, you're bringing both of them to the table, making sure they're both aware, on the same page, things like that. Like that's that's more than just figuring out what to do with the money.
100%, 100%. Often tell people that 60% of what I do is psychology. That are 40% is everything
Right?
else we talked about, right?
Yeah,
Uh, is
exactly.
controlling the emotions, is controlling sticking to the plan, having a plan,
Yeah.
and listen. There's good and bad days, good and bad weeks in the markets that you cannot avoid. It's just how you react to it, and having that vehicle again. If you're driving from New York to LA, I guarantee you that vehicle is going to break down somewhere in the middle of the country. And that's
Yeah.
okay. We don't need to panic. We just got to go find a mechanic, fix it, and away we go. And maybe it breaks 3 or 4 or 5 times. Allahu Alam, we don't know. But making sure you get to your destination and get there in safely with all your belongings and all your children and everybody else in the car there, right? So that's my job. My job is just literally that. I'm the driver of that vehicle while you sit in the back and enjoy.
Well, okay, so you have a PowerPoint ready for us. Would you like to do that, or do you want to talk about the women in and wealth? Which one would?
Yeah, let's do that. I'm curious to know how I would share it. Are you able to see it?
Yes, I am able to see. Maybe I have to share it.
Yes,
Oh, I
maybe.
okay.
Perfect. Beautiful.
All right.
Just a quick, if everybody can see it. No, you can come back. You can come back. You don't need to hide. Uh, there you go. Perfect. So I just prepared a few slides. I know there's a few questions about who we are, what we do, and stuff like that. This is actually my name, although I go by Hash Assad. My full name is Hashmatullah Assad, and that's what my mom says. Just make sure that I tell everybody.
What does it
This
mean?
what
What does Hashmatullah mean?
it means the power of Allah. The
The
power of Allah.
power of Allah?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. It's not a very common name, but a little
No,
bit
it's
common
not.
in around Turkey, Iran, and that part of the world. So again, like you said earlier, I'm an executive financial consultant as well as a division director with IG Wealth Management here in Canada. Well, 18 years of experience doing what I do. I have certain designations. One of them is a CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and a CFP is like the PNG of my industry for what I do, which is financial planning. Within the company, there's a lot of advisors that provide these services in Canada. There's about 2,000 practices. But out of the 2,000 practices, there's a select few of us who are qualified to be on the securities platform. We are on one of the few that can provide you advice not only on on funds, but also stocks, ETF, SMAs, crypto if we need to. We are licensed within certain provinces within Canada as well. Again, if you're from Canada and you're looking to use our services, if we're not in your province, that's okay because we can just get licensed really, really quickly. Again, my mission in life is to make sure that we educate as many people as possible, give them the capacity to invest their wealth in a halal way, and once you've kind of gone beyond that point, making sure that you have a comprehensive financial plan to address everything that we just talked about: taxation, retirement, investing, education for your children, and then how do you pass that wealth down to your next generation, making sure you have a will, personal directive, power of attorney, in a halal way, in an Islamic perspective. So in terms of the team, I know you had asked me. There's quite a few of us who do what I do, but within the team, there's two of assistants. I have Tanya and Tamana. My right hand man is Aegis Saran. He is our associate consultant. After 18 years of doing this, Yvonne, I know a few things, but there are certain situations where I need to engage our advanced financial planning team. There's actually about 400 years of combined experience behind me. Yeah, so we get into situations where we have a professional doctor. They have 4 or 5 practices. They have corporations, and they want to make sure we do the right tax planning, the right estate planning for them, and things like that. So there is a team of lawyers, accountants, and actuaries that we can tap into to come in and help us out if your situation requires that. Our Sharia consultant is our Sheikh Naveed Aziz. He's a very famous Sheikh. If you haven't done so, check him out on Facebook and his website. He's the guy that I consult with when it comes to the Islamic aspect of how we run our practice and how we invest our money, and in addition to having everybody else. The company's been around since 1926. It's one of the oldest financial firms in Canada. We manage about $122 billion of assets. And what we are known for in our industry, Srivan, is there's a lot of different institutions that exist here in Canada and US. You have the banks, you have the insurance company, you have the investment firms and things like that. Our approach is to have a sophisticated interactive financial planning process and experience for our clients to make sure that we address everything. So when it comes to financial planning, make sure that you have optimized your retirement. You have to know how old you are, when you're going to stop working. Now, I'll make a point here. When it comes to retirement, there is 3 types of retirements you can have. Not a lot of people know this. 3 types. Number one is that you work from the time you started, you get to a certain point in life, and I'm going to pick age 60, for example. You get to age 60, and unfortunately, you did not save enough money, and you must continue to work. You must continue to work. That's number one. Number two, you get to a certain point in life, age 60, you have enough money saved, and people say, Hash, I'm going to shut her down. No more work. I'm going to live off my investments, and I'm fully retired at that point until I pass away. That's option number two. Option number three, a lot of people say, listen, Hash, get me to a certain point in life, pick age 60, where I'm financially independent, which means money is not a concern for me. But more than likely, I'm going to do something because I love what I do. I want to be able to do something 2 or 3 days a week, maybe do some consultancy work. But I'm going to work, a few extra years after retirement just to keep sane, get out of the house. Because if you've been doing something for 30 years of your life and all of a sudden you stop and do nothing, you tend to lose 5 to 10 years of your life at the back end. Just know that. If you expect it to live to 90, and if you completely stop working, you're more than likely to pass away at 85, maybe 80. So making sure that you pass your wealth to your next generation is very, very important. Managing your cash flow is also important because what happens is that you want to be able to make money and then save and then pay your expenses. Now, the traditional way of cash flow is that you make money comes to you, you pay your taxes, you pay all the expenses, your telephone bill, utilities, your mortgage, your rent, your credit card, everything gets paid, and whatever tiny bit is left is what goes to your savings. I will encourage everybody to flip the equation upside down. What happens when you get paid? The first thing you should do after your taxes are paid is you pay yourself first. Pay yourself first according to your financial plan, and then worry about everybody else, right? Worry about your mortgage later. That's okay. Worry about your children later. Worry about your cell phone bill later. But pay yourself first. I cannot stress that out because once you do that, once you get into the habit, you'll be very, very successful over the long term. Preparing for unexpected. Make sure you have some cash set aside. If there's an emergency that comes up, your car breaks down, your furnace breaks down, your hot water tank breaks down, you have enough cash to access it, and then you're not going into debt to do it. And then planning for major expenditure is very important. Like major expenditure in this case is home. How do I buy my home the halal way? In terms of following us along, halal.assadwall.ca, there's actually some criteria in terms of what we do and how we certify investments to be halal. You can go ahead and check that out. Follow me on Facebook, connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, and of course, Google us, Assadwall Management. And this is the video history I was talking about. So if you're looking to educate yourself, you're looking to learn, how do I do this and what I get into, check this out, video.sadwal.ca. There's a lot of content there. We have covered topics, how to invest your money halal way, is Bitcoin halal or haram, buying your home the halal way, Islamic finance for you and your children, and quite a few different topics. So go ahead, check that out. And inshallah ta'ala, you'll find it informative. You'll learn from it. If you have questions, just fire it out to me. Like, I'm wondering about this. I'll help you as much as I can. That's not a problem. We, inshallah ta'ala, have a webinar coming up in the next few months. We'll be talking about, women and wealth in Islam, right? So how do we get our sisters educated and involved in this part of the equation and this part of conversation? And last slide, on our social media platforms, if you do get a chance to check it out, we often ask our clients a very simple question. It is, rank us from 1 to 10. How are we doing? And then leave any comments. Now, the comments are completely optional. You do not have to leave them, but we're always blown away by these comments because they just leave them there. And we take it and we share it with you on social media. But this is my favorite one. Hash is very knowledgeable. We work with him for years. He's done very well for us. His calm, laid back attitude is welcome and relief in these very stressful market times. He's always available to chat, even though we have an appointment, and we have great communication skills and stuff like that, and the value of advice. So yeah, these are what people are saying about us. And today, again, depending on time we have, when it comes to investing, the halal video that I sell without seeing, there's actually a webinar on there. We just did this actually a week ago, the latest version of it. Go ahead and check that out. We talk about stocks. What is a stock? How it works. We talk about what mutual funds are, how that works. We talk about ETF, what they are, how that works. And then we actually give you solutions. And where do you go to? There's actually right here. You can actually just take this information and implement it on your own if you need to, without having us be there. There actually, we talk about the difference between these different types of vehicles. We talk about riba in Islam. How do we avoid it? How do you do Sharia compliance? The easy method and the hard method. Again, all of these are available for free. There are apps, Zoya, Islamically. You can just punch in, is the stock halal or haram? And you're good to go. So again, a lot of education there for everybody who's interested in digging and finding out more.
That is so comprehensive, mashallah. Thank you so much. What a service you're doing for us.
Jazakallah khair.
It's so overwhelming, but you kind of make it less scary. In general, not just the whole halal part, but just in general. And I think like that's pretty huge for us because, it's a scary time right now. Everybody's talking about really scary things. Every time
Yes.
you turn on the news, read something, you almost don't want to, but you can't bury your head in the sand, right? I mean,
Yeah.
face it head on and really have a plan, like you said.
Yes, of course. I will, depending how much time we have, because these are some very scary times. I wouldn't mind actually sharing a couple slides with people just to give them some. I think people will find this actually very, very informative. I do a lot of stuff for my clients that I send out information to them to calm down the nerves, to making sure that they don't panic. But I think for people who are here, I wouldn't mind just to help them out just a little bit to make sure they also follow this guide. So let me actually share this with you if you're okay with this.
Sure, absolutely.
Absolutely. And then I'll get into some more questions, inshallah ta'ala. Let's go over here. Thank you very much, machine. Let's go over here. Okay, let's take a look here. So this is actually a video I just sent out to my clients. It's about a 15-minute video where I talk about different things. But the markets are very, very tough right now. Everything is down. It doesn't matter where you go, you can't hide from it. And the issue is it has to do with higher inflation, rising interest rates, a war in Ukraine, supply chain issues, and we have the COVID lockdowns, not necessarily in the US and Canada, but in China. So for people who are invested and maybe they're panicking and maybe they're looking to make changes, the first thing you got to keep in mind that these are normal. The markets go up and the markets go down, but after every storm there is sunshine. After every storm there is sunshine. There will be sunshine. It's going to come. It may take an extra 6 months. It may take an extra 12 months, but there will be sunshine. And when it comes, it's going to be very, very good, because if you look at it from the market low, the S&P 500 usually goes up 25% or more from that point of it. Mm-hmm. And it's very, very, very important to make sure that you do not listen to as much as possible to the naysayers, right? The doomsayers, we call them, right? These people are all over the world. They are on CNBC, they're on your TikTok, they're on your YouTube, they're on your Instagram, and they're talking about the world's going to come to an end. The market is going to go down there 50%. And the only way to save you is by buying their newsletter and buying their courses and training materials, and somehow they're going to save you. Nobody on the planet, on this planet, is going to knows what happens tomorrow.
Even Warren Buffett says that sometimes. Like, I've watched some videos of his, and he's like, sometimes he'll just say, "Well, I don't know." Like he's not, he's not a fortune teller.
Who is that, sir?
Oh, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett.
Yeah, Warren Buffett. Yeah, nobody knows.
He
So
says it. He admits it.
yeah, and these people who think that the market's going to go up another 20% or going to go down 20%, nobody knows, right? So a
Yeah,
daily reminder just to know that no one can predict the market. And if they were able to do that, they won't be telling me and you. Let's
right.
just put it that way, right? This is very, very important. I talked a little bit about psychology of investing. What happens is that you have to keep perspective that if I don't show you this part of the graph here, but if you look at the 2006, the market actually went up quite a bit. There's a lot of confidence, a lot of euphoria, and the market just went up and then it crashed, right? And then we go from the euphoria stage to the denial stage. We get into panic mode and like, okay, hash is down 30%, is going to go another 40. I want to sell out right now. And I promise you, the moment you sell out, that's when the market's going to turn around, go up, and never look back, right? To
Yeah,
making sure you control your emotions. Now, I provide that to my clients. We have those conversations, heart to hearts, to make sure they stay on the course. If you
right.
don't have somebody like that, I'm not sure what to tell you, but just know that sticking to the plan is very, very important. Recession's coming. Are we in recession already? Hash. What does recession look like? First and foremost, recessions have been around for a very, very long time. We always had them, but they don't tend to last very long. They come and they go. The expansion period that we look at, which means the good times, outweigh the recession times by a higher margin. So even though you may get into a bit of a recession, maybe it's what they call mild recession, it's irrelevant because the markets will bounce back. I also want to make sure that people understand that the markets tend to stabilize very, very quickly. If you look at the 2001 crash where the market went down 33%, the following year, even though it was down a little bit, but if you look at the 2008 crash, which was the worst crash that we had since 1930s, it was down 33%, but the following year it was up 35%. The following 5 years up
Yeah.
76%.
So many amazing things happened in that time period. I remember
Exactly.
because
Exactly.
that's the year I started my halal kitchen. It was in the recession. It kind of, it was like, all right, brace yourself for the storm and pivot some ideas. And,
Yeah.
people, when we're resilient thinking, I think we can panic less, right?
With panic class, exactly. You're 100% right.
Great. I love
Um,
that chart. That's a really good. I've never seen the numbers like that. That's awesome. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. There's a bull and a bear. I won't get into that, the good times and the bad times. But I also want to talk a little bit about strategies. So strategies for people who are already invested right now. Number one is staying the course. Markets will eventually recover despite the volatility like it has done every single time. If you look at the 2011, by the way, I talked to people, they've been with me investing for 18 years now. And I asked them, do you remember the markets went down 40% in 2008? Nobody remembers that, right? They've forgotten about it. There was a market crash in 2011, and the following year the markets were up 32%. The Crimea annexation that happened in 2014, the market was up 17% the following year. We talked about the 2018 global financial recession, which was actually in December of 2018. The market went down 30% in 1 month, just like back down. The
It seems
following
like
year was up 37%.
it seems like every 3 to 4 years something's kind of
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's normal, right?
The
Uh,
difference I think now is that I think COVID really got people down. I think that because it was absolutely global and everybody felt it. I think, and then right after that, we had the war with Ukraine. Now we're talking insecurity. Now we're talking inflation, all in like one short time period is I think a little bit feeling different than before. That's the message I get from people talking. It seems like everybody's talking about those things. So how would you calm the nerves now? when it
Yeah, so I would say is that number one, every situation is and will feel like the end of the world. Although we haven't had one of these, but 2008, a lot of us forgotten about it. But I truly felt like that was the end of the world because the whole capital markets were collapsing on its own.
yeah,
Although we didn't quite feel it, we actually got into a major recession, and it took a quite long time to get out of that mess. But we have forgotten about it. Every time you are in one of these crashes, the reason they crash so significantly because of what's involved. So you're right. The COVID, the lockdowns, the state of our health and our mental health do seem like the problems of today. But I promise you, 4 or 5 years from today, we will not be thinking about it because we moved on to a different problem at that time. That will be another world-ending sort of event, which never actually comes to be. Um, So that's number one. Actually, I wanna take a few seconds to talk about this particular slide. It's actually my favorite slide, and what this refers to is that hypothetically, let's just say you invested $10,000 in S&P 500 on January 1st of 1980. So me and you met. You give me $10,000. We put in S&P 500, and you went through 1980s. There was a crash in 1985, 87, the Iraq War One, Iraq War Two, the massive crash of the tech bubble, the 2008 crash, 18, 12, you name it. You went through hell in the last 30 years. At the end of 2021, you have $1.1 million. If you just left it, you did nothing. You just left it there, you did nothing, closed your eyes, went to bed. Okay. Now, if you were trying to be smart and you're like, oh man, I want to get out, I want to get in, blah, blah, blah. In 30 years of investing, I think it's about 11,000 days. If you miss the 5 best days in those 11,000 days, instead of having $1.1 million, you have $676,000.
Wow,
Isn't that crazy?
that is
And
crazy.
if you miss the best 10 days out of 11,000 days, instead of having $1.1 million, you have $487,000,
See, wow,
right?
that's why
Um,
you leave cash just sitting in the bank.
yeah, our cash will be worth, if you had 10,000, it'd be worth 2,000 now because of inflation. But nonetheless, investing and staying the course is very, very important. And also keep in mind that the markets take into account what we call forward looking. Okay, so what that basically means is that the stock market doesn't care what's happening in June of 2022. It doesn't care. It cares about what happens in December 2022 and then June of 2023. It is very forward looking. It is already built in the possibility of recession. It's already built in inflation is going to be high. It's going to be built in interest is going up. That's
Mm,
why they're down so
interesting.
much. Yeah, it's already built right in there. But what happens as soon as one of these scary things don't turn out to be scary? Market goes up. Oh, recession never happened. Oh my God. Okay, let's just go up all of a sudden because we thought it was going to happen. It didn't happen. So this is very important to know that every bad news that you can possibly think of, by the time it gets to you, it's already built in.
Oh, that is an interesting concept.
Yes.
So there's hedges built into the
Yeah,
market system.
100%.
So they
You
are they
already
like
know.
absorbers,
I'm sorry.
basically? Are they like shock absorbers, sort of?
In a sense, they're not shock absorbers. There are possibility of the worst thing happening, and the market is already taking into account what the impacts of those will be, and
Mhm,
therefore it already goes up or down according to that piece of data.
mhm.
Now, that piece of data may end up being true or not true is what ends up. The results will come out, but it's like you're writing an exam. You write an exam, but you have no idea if you passed or failed it, and you're scared the whole time until you get your mark, and all of a sudden, oh my God, I passed it, and you have a sigh of relief. That's what the markets are trying to do.
Yeah.
Uh, so the possibility of recession happening is irrelevant because the market already took that into account. So yeah, so here's a few slides. Again, I will say to you is that if in a capacity to invest, do that because again, this slide, what they talk about here is, if you had 10,000 invested in 2007, in 2009, it's worth $5,800. So your 10,000 went down to $5,800. If you took that money out and put it in a checking account, in 2015, you have $6,600. Okay. If you just left invested, did nothing with it, that 10,000 is worth $17,000. But if you're able to add to your positions when the market's worth the worst, you have $46,000. So your 20,000 now worth $46,000.
Wow. Wow, that's
So
huge.
it's a huge difference, right? So the thing we do is making sure that we stay on course. And I'll finish off with this one here. It's actually my other second favorite slide. Warren Buffett, he famously said, he says, be fearful when others are greedy and
Mhm.
be greedy when others are fearful.
Go against the grain.
Right. So what happens, you can actually track how fearful people are. If you just go to CNN and you just go to Google, type in fear index, we'll take you here.
Your
That's
index.
the fear index.
Yeah.
Extreme fear right now.
That's
Extreme fear right now.
exactly, I feel a lot more comforted because again, I'm like when it comes to politics or many other things, I don't buy into the fear. But when
Yeah.
they talk money, I always think, oh, they know exactly what they're talking about, and I know nothing. So that fear just really kind of is absorbed. But after hearing you talking and giving a lot of really interesting aspects about the markets I didn't really know, I think where things are a lot more in our control than we realize.
Yes.
or they can be if we have the right tools and information
That's
and
right.
someone like you to help.
Inshallah khair.
That's the key. That's the key.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Did you have any other questions? Anything that you that we
So
missed?
let's look at the time here.
We have about
Yeah,
4 minutes.
we're really coming up against. We have about 6 minutes to go. If there are any questions from anybody watching, please go ahead and put them in the comments. I wanted to get into the topic of women, but I think we're going to have to dive into that in the next interview because that's going to be a larger subject, women and money. Because you and I had talked, and you said so many really good things about, this, aspect of women in Islam and as the position of women and money. So I think that this is something I want to talk about in a longer detail.
Inshallah.
But let's just say one thing. There are a lot more women who today who are entrepreneurs, who are single, who are really sort of not depending on a husband or a man or even fathers to kind of help with the all of the things you mentioned here.
Mhm.
So what would you say to women who are kind of on their own right now, after everything you said? What is the one or two, tips you would give to women specifically? Is there anything very specific to women that you would give in this kind of market downturn or this situation about investing or about dealing with their money? And what would you, anything specific?
Yeah, so listen, the beautiful thing about our religion is that it does not differentiate much between men and women. Women have just as much of a capacity to be wealthy, to be able to hire. Our mother, first mother, Khadija radiallahu anha, was a person who would hire the best man in the world, our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as her employee. So the wealth in Islam for a woman have been there for a very, very, very long time, and we cherish it and we encourage it. So my advice to our sisters is no different than I would give somebody else. Now, situational basis it might be different. I mean, if you're single, you much more have higher income, and therefore your capacity to save more, invest more is the same. Investing your money for our sister Islamic, especially from the Islamic perspective, it checks off a lot of the boxes, because when it comes to Islamic investing, halal investing, we don't invest into the things that bug us, like, for example, alcohol, pornography, weapons, and things like that. So
Yeah.
that the ESG component is already there for us. So I would say not really, and I'll finish off with this. It says all the hadiths that talk about seeking your own risk, and so the best of risk is the one that you earn with your own hand. Apply to all women and men, right? And it's not being differentiated for any of them, right? So if you're in the capacity to earn and build wealth, there's no specific gender-based advice. Situational based advice is different for sure, and we can dig more into this inshallah next time.
And so how for both girls and boys, men and women, I used to be a teacher in Islamic school, and I used to see a lot of young girls getting married, and I always told them, no matter the situation,
Yes.
know your rights and
Mhm.
and know what Islam says about money, women and money.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
because we never ever know what can happen. It's not about just divorce. There's lots
Yes.
of things that can happen. Your husband could lose everything, and you might want to help. You want to put your kids through school, or God forbid, he could pass away young. Or there's so many things. So, I think the youth today are in a much better position than any of us were, because
Back in the day,
like
yeah.
you said, 20 years ago there was nothing out there. So I would encourage, and I'm sure you would, all the young people, if people who are watching, if you have kids, nieces, nephews in your community, pass on this information. I think it's really good for them to start young and
Cool.
getting information.
Yes.
Just your website alone has so much. Your webinars, they can watch them, they can get interested, and then get the kind of thinking started that there's a time period coming up that I really need to start planning, because the time goes very fast.
Yes, honestly, between me and you, there's the Islam and there's the culture.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that we think it's Islamic, but it's cultural, right?
Right.
Our capacity, again, Islam gives a lot of rights to our sisters and their
Mhm.
capacity to earn and make wealth and keep wealth, and that's theirs to keep forever. But then culturally, we have all these things that you can't do this, you can't do that. So we just have to differentiate that. I think for our sisters, the biggest thing is, and I have a lot of sisters, my own, I have daughters, is that making sure we educate them, we make sure we tell them what these things are, how they work, get them interested. I think one of the reasons I want to come and talk to you specifically, because I think the audience that you serve is a lot of our sisters and mothers, so we want to make sure that they hear about things like this, understand it, get excited, or maybe get that the little light bulb goes up, and then one or two or three of them implement what we talk about and better themselves, and then pass that down to the next generation, inshallah ta'ala. So it's all about education. And jazakallah khair to you for allowing me to be here and be in front of everybody and share this message.
Oh, it's been an honor to have you. And I never would have thought that when you approached me at the expo that we would be here. I mean, I wanted to when I hear about Islamic finance, but I never really think that anybody would be interested in sharing their information on our platform. But it makes sense. I mean, we are Islamic lifestyle, halal lifestyle. And money is that thing that drives a lot of our dreams. I mean, entrepreneurship is not easy without finance, right? Like planning, funds. I mean, there's so much that we never really talk about, So I look forward to, inshallah, many more conversations with you. I think this is a great start. Thank you for such an amazing overview of halal finance and investing and the markets. That was fantastic. I think I'm going to watch it a couple more times because
inshallah, I'll send you because I know I'll send you the more comprehensive version of that video. So that will be helpful to you. I just want to give a quick shout out to Brother Maruf. Maruf Yusuf is the one that introduced us. So
yes, thank you, Maruf. I hope
he's the one that gets all the credit and all the dua, inshallah ta'ala.
He's a great connector. It was so great to meet you guys finally in Canada. I mean, I've known Maruf for a while, but we didn't meet in person until then. And that was such a great event. MashaAllah, a lot of barakah, and inshallah next year there will be more. But I really appreciate what you are doing for the community. You are really, really, it's one of those things that you can't see physically, but you feel, right? We feel physically as a result of our lives and how they play out in the homes we have, the vacations we can take, the people we can take care of that we love. So what you're doing is so, so, so important. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah khairan. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. We'll see you again soon, inshallah. Sorry. If anybody has more questions, you can be sure to just add them in the comments, and then I will pass them on to Hash, and then we'll talk about the next topic soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Have a great day.
Wa alaikum salam.